Hello, I'm Jeff Livingston, the historian for the Hawaiian Railway Society. I hope you've been enjoying this series of little articles that we've been doing. And if there are anything you would like to hear about in particular, I encourage you to contact me at historian@hawaiianrailway.com. Let me know what you'd like to hear about, and we'll try and put a program together and answer any questions that you might have. For this session, I want to talk about motor cars. Now, not automobiles, but passenger cars that are motorized that were used by the railroads, not only in Hawaii, but all over the mainland and all over the world. As early as 1903, the Oahu Railway Land Company was thinking about a motor car of some kind for short runs, reduced numbers of people. However, the ORNL didn't take any action at that time, and around 1909, on a return trip from Ireland, the master car builder John Hughes stopped in the mainland at the Hall Scott Motor Car Company and the McKean Motor Car Company. He reported back to Ben Dillingham on the pros and cons of both, and somehow or other the newspapers thought or developed a story that they had purchased a McKean motor car. And the motor car in question was a very large, these are about 70 feet. They haul over 100 passengers. The McKean motor car has a absolutely sharp front end, and they were known as wind splitters. Well, this was not to be, and the ORNL never did purchase one of these cars. However, Dillingham's other railroad, the Hilo Railroad, did in fact pursue the first motor car that we know of in the state of Hawaii. This motor car was built by Fairbanks Morse and was a 24-passenger gasoline-powered car that arrived complete, ready to run, just add oil and gasoline. Unfortunately, we have never found a photograph of this particular car, but this car of the Nevada Copper Belt is identical to that which would have been received by the Hilo Railroad. Now, we recently did find one photograph of the actual Hilo Railroad car, but it is a view from the rear, and unless you are a dyed-in-the-wool railroad nut like most of us out at the railway are, you wouldn't recognize it as such. At the same time that the Hilo Railroad purchased the Fairbanks Morse car, they found that the Hall Scott equipment was suitable for use. Now, why did Hilo Railroad use this first? Like the ORNL, the railroad makes money by freight. Dillingham on the ORNL ran numerous excursions. In fact, the early timetables had 2 trains daily from Honolulu and 6 trains on Sunday to shuffle people out to whatever sites were available to generate income because there was no freight. The Hilo Railroad was kind of the opposite. They had freight from the Ola'a and plantations in that area, but they didn't have much in the way of passenger service except up toward Volcano. So to operate a full-fledged passenger train, steam locomotive, and passenger cars was just not cost effective. The Hall Scott car, the mechanics were bought from the company, but the Hilo Railroad made the body itself. This car was somewhere between 55 and 60 feet long, and looks kind of like an Interurban. It had a 104 horsepower gasoline engine and was capable of speeds of about 45 miles an hour. It was also capable of pulling a second passenger car if necessity demanded. The rear of the car was the platform, and to access the car from the rear. Now the car had actually 3 compartments. A baggage compartment, which you can see all the way forward through the open baggage door, and then the passenger compartment had divided into both first and second class areas. It looks like from the picture that there was some kind of partition between the first and second class compartments, and there was most assuredly a partition between the cargo light freight and the next passenger compartment. These cars served for a number of years, but overall proved to be not very satisfactory. Hilo Railroad, Dillingham lost control of the railroad around 1916 due to financial reasons, and the railroad was redesignated the Hawaii Consolidated Railway. In 1925, the Hawaii Consolidated Railway, in an effort to improve passenger service and get away from running complete passenger trains with steam locomotives, bought 3 2-ton white chassis. These are white truck chassis, and had bodies on them built by Thompson, Graff, and Elder in San Francisco. They also ordered 2 4-wheel trailers. Now, this information is a little bit unsure. It's been reported that 3 vehicles were ordered, and there's also been reported that only 2 vehicles were ordered. But in any case, this photograph is of one of the first 2, and it's a white truck chassis with a bus body and railroad wheels. This picture was taken at the Thompson, Graff, and Elder Company shops in San Francisco before these cars were shipped to the Big Island. When the cars did actually arrive, it's interesting to note that they came with rubber tires. Now, we don't know if those front tires could actually be steered or if they were just to move the vehicle around. We did not have any clear photographs of a control or operator station for any of these cars. These cars are typically called galloping goose. This is primarily because of the number of cars of this nature that were used on the Denver and Rio Grande Northern. So Hawaii had its own galloping goose, or galloping nene, if you will. The trailer is not clearly visible in this photograph. Unfortunately, the original photograph shows the trailer completely, but due to the technical limitations of the equipment right now, you can only see the one end of the trailer. The trailer is to the right, and these typically were pulled behind the power car, and they roamed all over the Hawaii Consolidated Railway. A front view of the car now shows the railroad wheels. There are 4 wheels installed and the fenders reinstalled. And this kind of gives us the indication that perhaps those highway wheels that were on the car when it arrived were just there so it could be moved around and were not actually connected to any kind of a steering mechanism. that would make the vehicle suitable for both rail and highway use. These cars were in service up till the end of the HCR in 1946, and I apologize for the poor quality of this photo, but here is one of the cars, or two of the cars, and both trailers, and this is at Hilo. You can see the sailor standing in the background, so this is wartime. And the cars appear to be painted black or a very dark gray. For most of their life, we believe they were painted much lighter colors, as indicated, but we have black and white photographs only. But these cars proved to be very reliable and operated for many years on the Hawaii Consolidated Railway. Now, the Oahu Railway Land Company did eventually get their own motor cars. The cost of operating a passenger train was excessive, and as the automobile made inroads into the passenger traffic, moving passengers by train became less and less profitable, to the point where they couldn't even break even. But there was still a demand for passenger service. So the ORNL developed two motor cars, M1 and M2, and these were equipped with Railway Motor Corporation power units, and the bodies were built by the ORNL. This was around 1925, 1926 when these cars were built. The two cars were about 60 feet long. M1 looked like a conventional motor car, very similar to the Hall-Scott car as far as function that was used by the Hilo Railroad. Loading was at the rear end of the car. This car was passenger only, and to our knowledge, only one class. So this was probably set up as a second class coach, or motor car in this case. They were capable of operating in both directions, so you see that there are marker lights at all four corners. You can see two in the front, and you can just see one at the back corner. And there was also a headlight at the rear end to allow movement in both directions. Now, the power supplied to these motor cars, both M1 and M2, were identical. There were two gasoline engines mounted to each of the two power trucks, and the control system was pneumatic. The operator would only operate from one end, but as I said, they were perfectly capable of backing up. To coordinate the motion of the two engines independently took a great deal of skill, and these cars, although they provided very good service for quite a long time, it was somewhat difficult to operate. Now, M2, which essentially would have been the sister to M1, was a totally different design. This has platforms on both ends and a baggage compartment. So it was capable of hauling light freight in addition to passengers. Why the ORNL made these two cars so physically different, we have no idea. Unless perhaps they were trying out two designs to see which one worked best. But these were the only two of this type that they ever constructed. Both M1 and M2 were also capable of pulling trailers, and they did so. This is M2, and you can see two trailers behind it. This is crossing, obviously, Pearl Harbor, probably somewhere between Aiea and Pu'uloa. These cars made numerous trips, and they remained in service for quite a number of years. Now, the ORNL ceased passenger service on the Wahiawa branch in the early 1930s. So passenger trains were not required. These cars did most of the service up until World War II, when passenger trains again became a necessity to move the huge numbers of people from Honolulu to Pearl Harbor and freight up to Schofield. However, the passenger service was never reestablished at Schofield, and only special occasions would passenger trains be run on the Wahiawa branch. Now, M1 and M2 being successful, the railroad decided to build two more motor cars, M3 and M4. Now, these differed significantly between M1 and M2 in that M3 and M4 were built using the bodies of two second-class passenger cars. Number 59 became M3 and number 60 became M4. Now, if you want to know what one of these cars looks like before it was modified, Coach 57 is identical to these cars, and it is at the Hawaiian Railway Society being restored to be placed back in service. The biggest difference between the standard passenger car and M3 and M4 is the addition of windows on the ends. The regular passenger cars, including 57, the ends have no windows. Just the door has a window. But these being motor cars, the operator had to see where he was going, and windows were installed on both ends. The other difference between M3 and M4 and M1 and M2 is that only one power truck was installed on these two newer cars. This made operation of the cars much easier and breakdowns less likely, because the coordination of the two power units was no longer required. So M3, and in this photograph, this is in the late 1930s, M3 is painted silver and we believe blue. We're not absolutely sure, because color photographs of this era are extremely difficult and rare. And M4 appears the same, and this is again late 1930s. Being the primary passenger hauling equipment of the ORNL during this time, both M3 and M4 were capable of pulling additional trailers. And at various times, various cars belonging to the ORNL had the trucks replaced with roller-bearing trucks. Normally, passenger cars had a friction-bearing Babbitt friction-bearing truck, but to make the cars easier to pull for the motor cars, roller-bearing trucks were installed. The only roller-bearing truck car still in existence is Combine number 36, which is located at Travel Town in Los Angeles. And she still has her original roller bearer, not original, but replaced roller bearing trucks for use with the motor cars. There were actually two combination cars so equipped, and you can see that these cars are also painted in the same silver and, as I said, we believe blue. And if my eyesight is still decent, the car to the left is 36, and that is the car that remains at the Travel Town in Los Angeles. While we would love to try and recover that car and the other ORNL equipment held by Travel Town, They are in such fragile condition that it is probably totally unrealistic that they would survive a move back to Hawaii. Not to mention that we at the Hawaiian Railway Society have more than enough projects to keep us busy for years to come without taking on any additional, although it would be still would be nice. Shifting back to the Hilo, or the Hawaii Consolidated Railroad, just for a moment, in 1928, one of the last motor vehicles or motor cars developed for the Hawaii Consolidated Railroad was a freight motor versus a passenger motor. This unit was built on a Mack chassis by the Hilo Consolidated Railroad in their shops, and could be seen all over the system hauling light freight, kind of like UPS and FedEx do today. Not quite as quickly, I'm sure, but this was a very definite positive step toward moving freight around Hilo, Hamakua, and up toward Volcano. The last motor car that was developed by the ORNL was M5. Now, to call this a motor car might be a little bit of a stretch, but she did get a number, M5. This was converted from an international bus, and it was used primarily on the North Shore to get kids to school from Waialua, Kahuku, so they didn't have a quite as difficult a journey. This photograph is, I believe, post-war, and the vehicle is out of service at this point in the Honolulu yards. But she did operate successfully for a number of years, and this photograph shows her at Waialua loading passengers, probably headed toward Kahuku. Now, there is one other special motor car that we refer to as a rail bus that was built by the ORNL. It never received a number, and it was built specifically to serve the Pearl City Peninsula. It ran between the Pearl City Station to the end of the peninsula and was there strictly to provide transportation for people who had bought property and lived on the peninsula, so they could get that 1 mile from anywhere on the peninsula up to the Pearl City Station. There had been a previous vehicle called a steam dummy that was in use on the peninsula, but it encountered a number of problems, being chain driven and slow, broke down a lot. There is a possibility that the first locomotive purchased by the ORNL, Kawila 6, which is located at the yard in Eva, may have been used for a brief time in the late teens, early 20s, to supplement the steam dummy. But in 1921, the ORNL built a Pearl City rail bus. Now, this vehicle is built on a Ford Model TT chassis. The chassis was extended, we believe. We know that this was 2 feet longer than a stock Model TT, but we're not completely sure if it was just the body that was extended past the end of the frame or if the frame itself was extended. I lean toward the body was possibly extended, because I don't see a significant difference in the wheelbase between any of the pictures that we have and a stock roadworthy Ford Model TT. Now, one of the things of interest in this photograph, this is fairly early, 1921, 22 at the latest. You'll notice that the wheels are the wood-spoked TT wheels that would have been on any Ford Model TT and very similar to a Ford Model T. The difference being that it has a steel tire that's been somehow placed over that wood rim. Later, the car wheels were replaced with what appears to be a solid wheel. Now, these wheels were not solid. They were actually paper wheels. And when I say paper, that's compressed board and under great pressure. And they were used extensively on Pullman cars because they were quieter and smoother riding. The outside and the inside of these wheels were covered with a light sheet metal covering. And in this picture, you can see that the rear of the vehicle extends pretty well past the rear axle, which lends more credence to the fact that the body was extended, but not necessarily the frame. Now, this car is special because the Hawaiian Railway Society intends to build a replica of this car. We have a Model TT frame, engine and drivetrain with a Ruxtall axle. And we are currently, the vehicle has been stripped to a certain point, and you can see the frame, that little light pinkish red in the background, and you see the axle sitting there. This vehicle is in the process of being recreated. Now, it's not going to happen anytime soon, but we are working along steadily on it. So if you have an interest in old cars, come on out. The fellow that is the project manager for this can certainly use your help. Again, if you have any questions or want to see anything in particular presented, please let me know. Just give me a shout, Hawaiian Historian at hawaiianrailway.com. Thanks so much.